Dear friends, hello to you all, and in today's video, we will have a review of Snapshot 25W44, and in which we added new Husky mobs, Husky Camel, Husky Skeleton, and also Husky Zombie, and many other interesting updates, which we will talk about in today's video. Well, before starting this video, don't forget to like, subscribe to my channel, and click on the bell if you haven't done so. Well, we move on to our review of Snapshot. Well friends, let's start with the very first change. This is what fixed the textures for the sword, for the spear, and also for the elite, and for other items. As you remember, in the last snapshot, I complained that when we hold some objects in our hand, small invisible textures that often interfered and distracted when you use some kind of weapon during PvP and so on. And the developers fixed them, but fixed them crookedly, because if you, for example, play on a large monitor, then you still have these little invisible textures visible. I don't know what this is connected with, but for example, now I can see these textures here, but they probably won't be visible in the video. I'll even screenshot it for you now and show it to you later. I'll attach it somewhere in the video and you'll see that these textures actually exist. It is stated that the developers have fixed them, but as always it is crooked. This applies to the sword. The sword also has these textures, and also elytra. Well, everything is crooked, as always. Everything is crooked with Mojang. Let's go further. Now the enchantment to lunge at a spear spends not only units of food, but also spends the strength of this spear, and also reduce the amount of food that will be wasted when using this spear. Just let me put a little sounds to 1%. Something with them is very distracting. For example, I go into survival mode. Just let us take some kind of apple there, for example, and heal ourselves. Let's take some golden apples and eat them now to heal ourselves. It turns out a few units of food, it turns out, are units of hunger. So well, while I have a Nazirite spear, enchanted to attack 3, and now it has a durability of 2025. I activate it, and just like that I just take it, fly, let's say, forward. And we spend 1 unit. Now we have 2024, and just like that we can just move quickly with the help of a spear. Well, since I have it now, different effects. Let's drink milk so that everything is clear. So drinking milk just means continue to use the spear to lunge. That is, you see, we are already spending less units of hunger, and for example, we can move like this quickly before we did not spend 4-5 units of hunger when we used the spear lunge once. Now we have, depending on the level that is applied specifically to the spear. For example, I now have a level 3 lunge, so I'm wasting. Here you go, friends. And the fact that our strength is now growing, and I think this is cool and correct, because earlier I also complained about this in the previous snapshot, because it was strange why we use a spear, but strength is not wasted. For example, if we used a trident, then strength would be wasted. A new mob has been added. This is our Husky Camel, such a cool camel. He spawns only at night, only in the dark and near villages. The most interesting thing is that this Husky Camel or Zombie Camel, you can call him whatever you want, but now he does not burn in the sun. If, for example, you have night there, sun, some other weather, even snowy, you will still have this Husky Camel. It will not disappear, it will not die. You can sit on it with the help of a saddle. You put a saddle on it, and you can quickly like this. That is just like using a regular camel, but it's still a Husky Camel with this cool black texture. I think it's cool because I think it will actually be used more often, and it will be, let's say, less common than a regular camel. Well, firstly, it has a beautiful texture, and secondly, this one is cool because it only spawns at night, but you can also use it during the day. You cannot reproduce them. That is, you cannot find 2 camels there and poke them. It turns out to be a rabbit's paw, and for you to have 3 camels, this will not happen. Only 1 camel, and it appears randomly at night. You can only heal his health with the help of a rabbit's paw. That is, here's a rabbit's foot, I take it. It turns out, I poke it with the right mouse button, and that's it. We have such particles like love, so I have tamed it accordingly, and I can calmly, coolly move on it. Well, such a cool camel, in principle, looks very cool. Well, the most interesting thing is that these camels will spawn with the Husky Skeleton and with my Husky. That is such a cool zombie that spawns in the desert. Accordingly, if, for example, there is a friendly player or mob on this mob, then, for example, if you put a pay on this Husky Camel, then this camel will be kind. If there are evil mobs on it, that is, hostile mobs, zombies, skeletons, and so on, then accordingly, this camel will also be evil. For example, I go into survival mode. Well, just let us activate a regular zombie husky and also a husky skeleton. Well, accordingly, they attack me. So, they will attack you. As soon as you kill them, the camel will be kind and will not attack you either, and other mobs will not attack you either. The difficulty is that this camel, as I already told you, has 2 mobs on it. Well, I still didn't have time to switch to creative mode. If you are attacked by this camel with these mobs, then the difficulty is that you have a zombie who has a spear, and you also have an archer. Here is such a cool husky skeleton, which was also added in this snapshot with a bow, and accordingly they will shoot at you, and it will be even more difficult for you to kill them. But the most interesting thing is that this skeleton has a bow. Arrows do not result in weakness, for example. If this skeleton still attacks you, then you will have the effect of weakness, and accordingly, you will not be able to hit anyone without a sword. That is, right now, I have a weakness. I hit, yes. I can't beat these mobs because I don't have a sword. Therefore, if you are without a sword, just empty-handed, then I advise you not to attack these mobs, including a skeleton. This one with a bow, because it will be a big problem. You won't be able to kill him in any way. I think with this principle, it's clear. This is the short command I put in the description for spawn it. Turns out, camel with these mobs. Well, in principle, this gives a plus for the camel itself because firstly, it will spawn less often, spawn only at night, and spawn with mobs that are difficult to kill. Well, if you, for example, are some kind of newbie and have just entered the world of Minecraft. That's why I think it's cool mob. A new husky has been added here in this snapshot about which he was just talking about. That is, this skeleton spawns. He always spawns with a bow, and always with arrows for weakness, so be careful. He just doesn't attack him either. New settings have been added. This is anistrophy. Filtering with a heavy name, in fact. I don't know exactly how it is translated into Russian, but if we go to the video settings, then here we have such a thing. It affects the visibility of blocks in further. For example, there was a bug on different video cards. On Nvidia, I don't remember. Or on AMD. In short, if we, for example, look ahead, then sometimes we had bugs with drawing blocks in front. They could flicker, that is, disappear, appear, and so on. Now you won't have such bugs if you use these settings. This will actually affect performance a little. If you set this setting to 8, your video card will be loaded a little more. But still, you will no longer have bugs with blocks and with drawing blocks in front. This is an interesting setting, and we move on. Now we have another setting called chunk phase. As soon as I logged into the server on Eternals, I thought it was some kind of bug or something with Eternals, but if you fly and load new chunks, then they will load smoothly and cool. Now I'll fly closer here. They're like this. It's cool. It appears with such a slight delay, smoothly, very cool. And if I, for example, now completely relog into the server, that is, I log out, log into the server, you see how chunks now appear, just a little bit like this, with such a smooth transition. This is actually somehow unusual, and what's most interesting is that you can again change these settings. Here is the chunk fade. You can completely disable this chunk fade. That is, you want to have this fog. Let's say, now chunks will appear as before in Minecraft, but if you, for example, set these settings to maximum for 2 seconds, then you have these chunks will take a very, very long time to load, and with such fog in 2 seconds. But this will, of course, take a very long time. But I don't know, you can use it however you want. But I don't really want to use these settings for 2 seconds. I'll leave it at the default as it was. Well, I think even 0.45. That is, about 45 milliseconds. I think it would be more than is normal for drawing chunks like this. This is how it works in principle. Let's teleport to the bridges because something flew very far from our location. And that's what the players have been waiting for a very long time. That's what the players have been waiting for a very long time. I finally have horses been waiting for a very long time. I finally have horses. They can swim with us now. Yes, friends. For example, I have a horse. I can sit on it. For example, approach the water and she will float. She will no longer fall under the water. She will not throw the player off her. And you can then simply swim across using a horse in Minecraft. There are rivers, lakes, and so on. I think this is very cool. Previously, if you needed to transport a horse, for example, to the other side, there, or on the other side, then you had to build some kind of Putin. Incomprehensible. It takes a very long time to get around all this, and now you can easily just saddle a horse, swim across some kind of river, water, and so on. This is very cool, and I'm very glad that this was added. But this is, of course, one of these good changes is in this snapshot. But there will also be bad ones, which I'll tell you about now. Something that really pissed me off but we'll get to that now. Language search has been added. For example, let's go to language settings. And now we can finally, calmly, search for languages. For example, I need Russian. I just write Russian in Russian. And now we have Russian, Belarusian at once. Other languages are also appearing. For example, I need to write Ukrainian. I'm writing here, and the feeling immediately changed. Ukrainian and other languages are cool. Because before you had to stand up like this for how long? And say downstairs where Russian is. Somewhere Ukraine is. We can easily write and find a language, for example, English, and here we have, accordingly, all the English languages. And this is very cool. This is Respect big. Plus a huge bet for the developers. This is great. But what's not cool is game rules. Now, all game rules in Minecraft have been renamed. For example, if you want to put a cycle there, you won't be able to because it didn't exist. Now it's gone. He changed the name. And now if you want to make it so that you have a fixed time of day, then you should now use exactly the game rule advanced time. And here you already write fall or true. Everything is completely game rule. If you, for example, use the keep inventory gamma rule, then it has also been changed. Now we have for gamma rules that had 2 or 3 words in themselves. That is, in the very name of the gamma rule. Now this underscore is used. In general, it's difficult with game rules. I think maybe I'll even write it down. A new separate video in which I will analyze the new name for these game rules, what it means now, which game rules mean what changes were made for what. And so I think yes, we'll have to figure this out a little because, well, it's still strange and we'll have to learn a new name for game rules. Well, now we can use seconds, days, and so on in world border. For example, I want to indicate in the world border, for example, set the distance there to 10,000 blocks. And before you had to indicate all this in ticks. There are, as I know, 20 ticks in 1 second if I'm not mistaken. Of course, I could be wrong. And you earlier to indicate there, for example, so that for an hour your world boarding would increase by 10,000 blocks. Just as an example, yes, you had to multiply this hour by 60, by 20 in short. It was pure mathematics. And now we can easily indicate this time. In days, well, in Minecraft itself, of course, in seconds. And that's cool. For example, I want to be there in 60 seconds. World border has increased by 10,000 blocks. Then we can now easily register seconds, and you do not need to multiply these seconds by ticks in order to indicate the full time when this world border will increase. This is also a plus, it's cool. And we can also indicate here, for example, the time in days in Minecraft itself. After 1 day in Minecraft, your world of border will increase and so on. This is very cool, I think. Therefore, friends, here is an interesting snapshot. But many thanks to the developers for finally fixing the horse. The fact that it can now move on water. Thanks to the developers for adding new mobs. Here's a camel. I think it's a cool mob, a new addition to the desert. And I think many will use it for movement. Well, here's an example. And the fact that new mobs have also been added. Dear friends, thank you all for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe to my channel. Click on the bell if you haven't done so. I was with you, TheDeinekoArtem. Good luck everyone. Bye bye everyone, friends.